welcome to Rough Start, where we here at Rough Magic Games teach you how to play a different tabletop role-playing game every episode. That's right, we run through it so you don't have a rough start. My name is Charlotte, I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional GM with Rough Magic Games, a collection of professional game masters for hire. If you're interested in playing a game with one of our game masters, be sure to check out roughmagicgames.com. If you already know who we are and love what we do, check out our Patreon. The link is in the doobly-doo below. I love exploring the wide world of pen and paper role-playing games. And hold on to your tails, folks, because tonight I am joined by...
Blerdy Disposition. I am a YouTuber, content creator, and online professional game master, and I am a fan of Mausritter and everything OSR. Thanks for having me on, Charlotte.
Oh, thank you for joining me, Blerdy. I am so excited. I first found you via your Mausritter video, so I just knew I had to reach out when I knew I was going to be talking about this game on Rough Start. I was like, oh, I hope they say yes.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised because I made Mausritter video and my Mausritter content a while ago. I honestly I honestly thought people just they didn't really think much of it, but I'm happy to be on here. Thank you so much, seriously.
Of course, and I'm always happy to have you back as well after this episode. Amazing. Yeah, so I hope that is not too cheesy, but I am excited to be talking about Mausritter.
Not at
um,
all.
Amazing. So, fun fact for everyone out there, Mausritter literally translates to Mouse Knight in German. It is a rules light fantasy tabletop role playing game where players take up the sword and don the whiskers of a brave mouse adventurer. A mouseketeer, some might even say. It is, unless that's copywritten, I don't know. It was written by Isaac Williams and published by Losing Games in 2020. So it's still a bit of a newer game. And I personally have not yet played Mausritter. Audience, I am on a string of games that I'm talking about that I haven't actually played. I'm so sorry. The next episode will be a game that I've actually played, I promise. But I love this book, and I think it's really lovely. Yeah, Blerdy, what's your experience with Mausritter?
Yeah, I have played Mausritter a bit. I have ran it professionally on Start Playing. I have obviously talked about it on YouTube. I have ran it for my friends online via Reddit. So I have a lot of experience running Mausritter. And the biggest thing I can say, if you're, I call them D&D pilled, if you're D&D 5e pilled, it's an old school Renaissance game or based off old school Renaissance. So the system is very simple. You have 3 stats, and it's a roll over system where, and that's pretty much the synergy, right? Everything else the GM really creates for you. But yeah, Mausritter as a system is very simple, very close to home, and you can pick up and play whenever.
Amazing. Yes, we were chatting before the stream started and talking about some of the inspirations for Mausritter. And speaking of OSR, Into the Odd is where Mausritter gets most of its core rules from. Also, games like Knave and Mothership definitely inspired Mausritter as well. They're, in fact, in the acknowledgments of the Mausritter book. So straight from Isaac's mouth. These are the inspirations for Mausritter.
Yep. And actually,
Beautiful. Oh, go ahead.
I do think because of Mausritter's impact, there's actually, I'm not sure we'll go into this later, but there's a huge community of Mausritter creators, content creators, and sort of homebrew content. And I can go into that at a later point, but the community is huge and the inspiration is very clearly there for Mausritter.
I love it. Uh, Something that's interesting about playing TTRPGs as long as I have, and I think what we were talking earlier, and you said you were a Gen Zer, so to me you are a little baby.
Thank
But
you.
when I've been playing for like over a decade at this point, and like when Mausritter first came out, and I was just like, that's just Mouse Guard. Why do we need another mouse game? Just play Mouse Guard. But this game is so much better than Mouse Guard. So I'll just eat my words on that one.
Yeah, I have not played Mouse Guard, but I heard Mouse Guard's a little bit more crunchy. I'm honestly not sure, but I think it's a little bit more crunchy, I've been told.
It is. I have played a little bit of Mouse Guard. It is definitely crunchier than Mausritter in a way that I don't find like entirely fits with the themes and ideas of Mouse Guard. But you know, we can. That's a discussion for later. But I suffice to say, my mind has been changed on Mausritter. I think it's really lovely and worthwhile.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why like I gravitated towards Mausritter is because of like not the difficulty of the game, but how fast and easy you can just really jump into it. And minor correction, it's a roll under system, so you have to roll less than or equal to your save or your
Right.
stat. So apologies for that.
No, no worries. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of the mechanics a little bit later, but thank you for the self-correction. Appreciate it. If there is nothing else, just talking about kind of the, beginnings of our little episode here, I think we can move on and talk about the lore of Mausritter, of which there is admittedly not very much. So this will be a very short section. In Mausritter, you are brave mice in a dangerous world. You abandon the warmth and safety of mouse settlements and venture forth into the dark and dangerous places where other mice do not dare to tread. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, with that, I think that's like a real big benefit to the system is that the lore is largely what you, the GM, and the players craft together. Now, there is a given idea that this takes place in quote unquote the real world, where a lot of the locations you'll visit, a lot of the factions you meet are from the real world. For example, you might meet a cat lord. That cat lord might be the cat of a family's house. An entire adventure can take place in a suburban home or the backyard to a rural area. So the lore really is based in real life, kinda,
Mm.
and sort of the movies of mice. I like to call it. What's that movie from Pixar, Disney, 2006?
Ratatouille?
Yes, it's a little bit of Ratatouille and that other movie from the early 2000s with the white mouse in it. I don't remember the name of him, but
Oh, with the white mouse. It's not flushed away, is it?
oh my
That's
god, not
different.
oh my god, I was thinking of Flushed Away earlier. Okay, it actually is a little bit of Flushed Away. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm
It
saying that,
is.
but it's a little bit of Flushed Away and other similar content. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of like where Mouse Ritter pulls from.
Yeah. The rescuers, um,
E-Cart,
Mouse
Chippendale.
Guard, Redwall. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Stuart Little. There we go.
Stuart Little.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you, producer Molly, for the clutch Stuart Little. Wow, amazing. The little white mouse. Yeah, I guess he is a little white mouse.
Yeah.
I have not thought of that movie in a very long time, so thank you.
No problem. We were cooking. What can you say?
We were, we were cooking. Like Remy the Rat in Ratatouille, we were cooking.
So on that, and we might get into it about it's a little bit about the lore part, but when you have craft over your lore or direct creative direction over your lore in a game like Mouse Ritter, players will come up with great ideas. Actually, one of the players straight up said, "I want my mouse to be a chef," and I just went with it. I just said, "Hey, you want a cute little mini chef hat?" You just kind of just create things as you go. They kind of created it out of like leftover scraps from the kitchen, so it was really
Oh,
sweet.
oh, I love that so much. That sounds amazing. The only other thing I'll add about the lore, besides it being like in the quote real world unquote, is that there is also magic, which we will get into later. But there are your mice can cast magic spells if you want to. So it's the real world plus a little extra for fun.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. I think with that, so lore, once again, pretty easy. Pretty much you have total control over what you want your little mouse world to be. I think we can slide on into the basic mechanics. So you already mentioned it's a roll under system. Um,
Correct.
so basically, the main mechanic in Mausritter is you are rolling your saves. So when you describe your mouse doing something risky where the outcome is uncertain and failure has consequences, the game master will ask you to make a save against either strength, dexterity, or will. Very OSR. To make a save, you roll a d20, and if the result is less than or equal to your relevant attribute, the mouse succeeds. So roll under and suffers no consequences. If the result is over the attribute, then you fail and you have suffered consequences as described by the GM, which is my favorite thing as a game master.
I can agree on that one. Trust me.
The only other thing about saves is there are opposed saves in this game. The lowest roll wins. It's very simple. And this game also does have advantage and disadvantage, like Dungeons and Dragons. If you are D&D pilled out there, however, it does kind of the reverse. So advantage, you roll twice and take the lower number. Disadvantage, you roll twice and take the higher number.
Yep, all correct on that one as well. I can speak a little bit on what that does for like the flow of the game if you want me to.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Yeah, so when you're playing as a player, what makes it really useful is if you've played D&D, right? The familiarity is already there. You don't have to, even in character creation, right? Character creation is based off 3d6, and you keep the two highest dice results for a value between 2 to 12. For example, let's say I roll a 3d6 and I get 5, 10, and a 12. You can put those stats wherever you want, or the GM can distribute it your choice, and you keep those stats. You don't change them throughout the entirety of the game. So the 3d6 rolls, the d20 roll for rolling under, and occasionally when you're rolling for like a weapon or something, you keep all the same rolls similar to D&D. So for players looking for a new game, Mausritter is a really good transition.
Absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense. And I think my understanding is that the next kind of biggest mechanic is your mouse's inventory, which I think is really fascinating. I have personally not played a game where like an inventory works like this. I think it's really cool, and I really want to play this game for this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
do you want to speak on inventory slots?
yeah, inventory slots are really fascinating because they're essentially based off of your character or your mouse's ability to essentially they're like slots. They're literally item slots. Let me go ahead and check this out. I know this is not a, like official video, but the cool thing about it is that you have inventory slots. As stated, your mouse carries items in the inventory slots. Most items take up one inventory slot. Some larger items, such as two-handed weapons and armor, take up 2 slots. Depending on, all mouse have a main paw, a body slot, which will have their armor, and then 1 to 6 various slots, depending on their inventory and conditions. So, excuse me, I had my mic for a minute. So, in this case, what I did was because I ran mine online. Each player had to have one item already on their body, and the rest they could just carry, right?
Mhm.
And the cool thing is that you have to really manage your inventory, and it doesn't require you to have to calculate encumbrance, a particular amount of weight on an item, or anything like that. And when you take out that extra equation of math, players instantly love caring about their inventory, especially in an in-person game.
Yes, it's why Resident Evil works so well, also.
Agreed. It's really why when you have that limitation of you can only carry 1 to 6 or 1 to 7, it gets players to be more creative with their options and their choices. Players don't have dark vision, so they need to carry a torch. They need to carry a lantern. Players need to carry rations, right, if they're traveling throughout the day. And that's not even taking into consideration treasure, right? Because that's actually how you level up as well. You need to bring treasure back from the dungeon or from the crawl to a safe location, and then use that treasure in a meaningful way for your Mausritter or your mouse character to level up.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, apologies. So, inventory definitely is a big part to the game's fun, and I think especially in person, the inventory slot system works very effective. Online, it's a little harder though.
I bet. Yeah, and you'll notice here on the slide that we have up on the screen that there are little dots next to each item. So you'll see the torch, for example, has 3 dots total and 2 are filled in. There are usages in this game. So the torch has 3 uses before it will go dark. So that's another aspect of inventory management that is fascinating, where you have to think about like, how often can I use this before I don't have it anymore, or before it breaks and I have to fix it. It's definitely a game of management. It's a management game for sure.
It's a little bit of like a simulation game, some people call it. I believe a developer actually, not from this game, but similar games, said games that require you to manage inventory like this with slots are part simulation.
Absolutely. I
And
totally feel that.
and actually about that, so you did mention that I did mention that each of our slots are taken up, and you did mention that they use over time, but that also includes conditions. I think this game is a modern game. Obviously, a modern game, came out 2020. What am I saying? So,
But it has modern sensibilities.
modern sensibilities. There we go. And you can definitely see how it's influenced by Power by the Apocalypse games with conditions. So,
Yeah.
conditions are harmful effects that take up your mouse's inventory slots, and these conditions have requirements to be cleared. For example, if you're hungry, you need to eat. Obviously, if you're injured, as it shows, you need to take full rest. But how you do that is the interesting part, especially when you are dungeon crawling and all of your mice, excuse me, are rather fragile, as mice are. So it's another aspect of the give and take, and how do your players navigate dangerous situations or risky situations? I Is it okay if I give a good example?
Yeah, go for it, please.
Yeah, so I was running a horror themed Mausritter game.
Ooh, perfect
Yeah,
for
I don't think
Halloween.
yeah, I don't think we actually talked about the kind of campaign I ran, but it was a horror themed campaign. It was called Radinoff. Yeah, I know,
Ooh.
I know, I know. So I one of the times they were exploring, they encountered a couple of caterpillars, and the caterpillars were pretty dangerous. One of the players actually got nearly knocked out or got injured really badly, and I gave them the injured condition. But after defeating them, they realized that they didn't have the inventory slots to carry the treasure that was on the opposite side of the room. So the players had to really finagle how they're going to carry that. They did that by, well, befriending a couple of rats that had extra capacity, aka getting themselves some hirelings. So a lot of the play around it is based off inventory management and whatnot. And the conditions really add an extra sense of creativity, I think, to it.
Yeah. I do think that is like brilliant game design when you have an inventory management system and then the conditions, they take up inventory slots. I think that works very well in my opinion. I think that's great.
Also, if you like Lego pieces, or if you're a fan of like Tetris, that sort of stimuli of like putting something into a slot just works so well for people.
Yes. Once again, see Resident Evil.
Amen on that one. I'm a
Um,
Resident Evil fan, so I agree with
yes,
that.
I mean, good. I'm glad. I'm glad we agree. Yeah, Resident Evil is so good, actually. I love Resident Evil.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I love horror games in general, horror RPGs in general. It's like kind of my thing. So
Me too. I love spooky, scary stuff. Yes, last year for Halloween on Rough Start, we talked about Call of Cthulhu. Um,
nice.
yes, but this year I wanted to go a little bit lighter and a little bit less spooky for the people who don't like spooky stuff out there.
Hmm.
But I think it's really great to hear that you can still run a horror game in Mausritter because of
Yeah.
course you can. I mean, think of like Secret of Nim. That is kind of a scary movie.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually crafting another video on horror and another topic. I'm not gonna spoil it. But
Ooh.
when I was doing my research, one of the people actually suggested Mouse Ritter, and they said Mouse Ritter can be played as a horror game. And it's because the characters are frail. There are cat lords that rule over the land, and your characters are facing up against horrifying odds. Horrible frogs, cat lords, the unknown world. There are horror elements, and if you lean into that, you can make a horror game.
Yeah, it's
So
terrifying being a mouse.
yeah. My players got into some other encounters with fish, cultist mice, a
Oh
really
no.
big bullfrog, and some other stuff we'll go into later when we talk about homebrew.
Ooh, I love it. Foreshadowing for a little bit later.
I'm a YouTuber. I kind of know how to foreshadow sometimes.
Love it. Love it. Perfect. Yeah, so the inventory, we already talked about usage. Um, there are rules for like how often you mark usage on an item in the rulebook. We won't go too much into depth in that. Encumbrance can happen in the game too. Your mouse can't run and makes all saves with disadvantage if they are encumbered. However, you can bank your items too. So if you're in a mouse settlement, pips, which is currency in the game, and items can be stored in a bank or a safe box. Your mouse has to pay a fee, and then when they retrieve the pips or items as well,
Yeah,
which I
it's
imagine works like in Pokemon, where
pretty
you
much.
yeah.
Yeah, in my game, we didn't really focus too much on settlements because they were actually running away from, they were actually on death's door. I kind of copy and pasted Skyrim's opening in this scenario. I know.
Good.
I bought a Skyrim, Stuart Little, and Mouse Guard
Let's
all in
go.
one stream, so you're welcome.
Let's go. I love it.
But I didn't really explore too much on the mouse settlement aspect, but pips are super useful and are also also part of the leveling up or advancement aspect. So for anyone who's playing the game, you definitely want to keep track of your pips and the treasure you grab.
Yes. Definitely keep track of all that stuff. Um, Speaking of keeping track, let's talk about time. Ooh, smooth transition. Let's go.
That's pretty good.
Time.
Damn.
Thank you. I too am a YouTuber. I can make transitions. Um, so, we've got kind of three measurements of time in Mausritter. We have a round, which is used during combat. Each round is less than a minute. A turn is used during adventure site exploration. Each turn is around 10 minutes. So that terminology is a little bit different than a lot of other TTRPGs. So just keep it in mind. A turn is not like when your turn in combat. A turn is 10 minutes of exploration time.
Yep.
And fights almost always only last one turn. And then a watch is used during wilderness travel. So each watch is 36 turns, about 6 hours, and there are 4 watches in a day.
Yeah. I think for those who are not used to old school Renaissance games, this is a pretty common thing. So, an explanation on the turn and watch thing. A turn is different in 5e because the game is more focused on adventure It's more focused on overland travel, and it's more focused on dungeon delving and that aspect. So combat is one of the few things you might not get into much because combat is meant to be deadly. And a tenet of OSR games is not that you can't have combat or that you can't win or that you can't be a hero or that you can't be cool, but rather combat should be a last resort. You should not be trying to fight every single thing, and taking a turn to look through a room, taking a turn to observe your surroundings, or even taking a turn to analyze the enemy or the conflict will make your life a lot easier. As in, you won't die being eaten by a cat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good observation. Like this game is very much like not. There is combat in the game, but if you've gotten to combat, maybe you've kind of messed up a little bit.
Yeah, I always suggest to new people to OSR games, running away does not make you a coward, because cowards get to live.
True.
And you can not be a coward if you are going back. That sounded clever in my head, but it didn't come out as clever. But that's okay.
You can live to fight another day if you run
There
away.
we go. There we go.
And yeah, kind of with the OSR being more focused on overland travel and exploration, and time measurements kind of going hand in hand with that. Up on the screen, I do have an example of the hex map, which is the system that Mausritter. I keep on wanting to say mouse guard. Mausritter uses. So for anyone in the audience not familiar with like hex travel, kind of what's a good like description of like hex based travel?
Yeah, I could try to explain it. So hex travel is it's hex travel is essentially how your character is going to get across a piece of land over a particular amount of time. Different games do it differently, but for hexes in Mausritter, your party of mice can travel 1 hex/mile per watch. Difficult terrain or difficult weather, such as marshy lands, swampy areas. You know, maybe there is a human being that's guarding their suburban household. So that's difficult terrain. And that will affect the amount of time. And I'm sure some of you are wondering, why does that matter? Well, remember, this is a simulator game. You're managing your resources. That means if you're traveling to the wilderness and you run out of rations, then you pick up multiple conditions, then the death spiral starts happening. So that's part of why overland travel is emphasized if you run it in your games. So the actual mechanics of overland travel, Charlotte, and to the audience, isn't too complicated, but it's another aspect of the management system and the sort of survival mechanics to the game, including foraging and other stuff.
Yes, definitely the other hand of overland travel is they do allow you to forage. You can spend your watch, so 6 hours foraging, and you can find D3 uses of rations. For anyone in the audience, if you want to use a D3, you roll a D6 and then divide by 2. You're welcome.
Or if you are playing online, you can just do a dash RD3 if you're doing Roll20, or this isn't sponsored. By the way, it's not sponsored, but if you do play Dungeon Crawl Classics, they have a D3 dice, which is shaped like a D6.
D3 dice.
I know this is, like I said, this isn't an official like video, so this is live stream, but I would pull up a D3 dice if I could, but I can't. But it's really cool. So you can do those options if you don't have that, okay?
Beautiful. Amazing. Love that. So you've got a lot of options if you want to roll a D3, basically. I'm sure there must be some dice manufacturer that makes an actual 3-sided little thing,
Probably. I haven't seen them, but I've been looking into like maybe not developing one, but definitely getting one, because I love what they call Zochi dice, like unique dice like D16s and all that stuff. But
Yes.
We're getting distracted. We're getting distracted.
We are. We're getting distracted.
Instead of D3s,
yeah.
let's talk about D6s and character creation.
Let's do it. Let's talk about character creation. Amazing transition. That was beautiful.
You know what? I gotta match the energy.
Yeah, so there is a whole page that has a very simple step-by-step making a mouse instructions. Step 1 is attributes: strength, physical strength and resilience; dexterity is speed and agility; and will is strength of will and charisma. You already mentioned for each of these attributes, you roll a 3d6, and then you keep the highest 2 dice, and then you can swap any 2 attributes. Or if
Correct.
the GM wants to just assign them, that's also an option.
Yeah. And for some of the OSR veterans who are watching this, you could also be that GM who says, no, you roll straight down. I have done that to my players before. I'm like, no, you don't get to choose. If I'm feeling bratty or toxic.
Toxic. Do you ever just say roll 2d6 and keep whatever?
Not 2d6, 3d6, but I do tell them to keep. The number, because I usually emphasize that. Yeah, these stats might suck, but that is okay. That's part of the charm of the game.
Yes. Yeah, you could just have a little 2 in strength and be a weak little mouse, but you're still brave, and that's what matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a tenet of just playing this game is most encounters you should be able to get across, even if you don't have the physical capability to do it. With enough genius thinking and ingenuity, you'll be able to get through it.
Absolutely.
Or die trying.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a good option. All right, do you want to talk about step 2?
Yeah. So step 2 is once you've rolled your stats, your attributes that they're called, you roll for hit points, you roll for pips, and then you cross-reference the values of those on the background table that is shown on the screen. The background table is really fun because with the background table, it gives you an idea of what your character was before they started adventuring. Now, these are some of the backgrounds, for example, a test subject, a kitchen forager, a cartographer, a fungus farmer, a prison guard. But if you, as the player or game master, are feeling creative, you can create your own and most certainly find some on itch.io.
I bet there's a lot of homebrew stuff for this game, for sure.
Yes, there's actually so much. I'm just looking through itch.io right now, and there's just a wide diversity of backgrounds, modules, created just a lot of created content around that I could show, and I've used actually. So
there you go. And that's just, I mean, a game that has a thriving community like that is always a good sign. I mean, I think that's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I think we definitely could talk about it as we get maybe like after Magic, because the community is still there. It's quite large.
Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, we'll get to that when we talk, probably when we talk about running the game at the end.
Yeah.
That'll be perfect. But getting back to character creation, there are only 4 steps, so we're halfway through. Step 3 is determining equipment. So equipment and inventory, very important in this game. You always start with torches, rations, and 2 items from your background, and then a weapon of your choice. If your highest attribute is 9 or less, you roll on the background table again and take either item A or B. So you take an additional item. If your highest is 7 or less, you take both.
Yep, sounds about right.
Beautiful. The last step 4, is kind of all the last little details. Mausritter has unique birth signs for your mouse, which I think is really cute. You can be a star, a wheel, an acorn, a storm, a moon, or a mother, based on the stars when you were born. You choose your coat color, and 1 physical detail. And then you choose a name appropriate for a brave mouse. And something that I love when books do is the first page of Mausritter, even before the index, is random tables that has mouse names and other stuff on it, and I love that so much.
Yeah, it just lets the players and game master immediately start rolling up characters. This game, if you're going to any convention, PAX Unplugged, Gen Con, FlameCon, MomoCon, any of the millions of RPG or gaming conventions, it's really good for convention play. And
Totally.
in fact, there is a lovely resource by Lucene Games called the Mausritter character generator. It is, I think, an
Ooh.
official character generator for a Mausritter. And if you're looking for a fast, quick character, you can just go to the page and roll up a character.
That's great. I love that. Hold on. I'm going to go look at that right now. Pause the video, everyone. Um,
I actually have it for you if you want me to.
yes,
Drop it.
please. Yes, please.
Here you go. I'll drop it in the chat. I know that for the recording, we'll also probably have it available in the description box
Yes,
as
we
well.
absolutely will have this in the description box, in the doobly-doo down below for everyone. Oh, this looks great. This looks
Yeah.
so handy dandy.
And
Thank you, Losing Games.
yeah, I know. Yeah, that's just some of what they had. They have a lot of the community resources. And while you are down below in the description box, you can always, hit the like for Rough Start. Just saying.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop. Like
No,
glazing. I feel like a
you're
little. I feel a
oh,
little.
I love it. You're doing my job for me. It makes it so easy. This is perfect. I should only ever work with other YouTubers now. I'm never going back to having other guests on my
No,
show.
no. I joke around. I say it's best to not always work with YouTubers or content creators, because it's important to have that self reflection.
Yes, I do agree with that. I do agree with that for sure. But thank you for plugging. I'll always be plugging. Absolutely.
Of course.
And and while you're here, audience, go check out Blerdy's YouTube page, Blerdy Disposition, and give him a follow and a like and a subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
There we go. Amazing. See, we're getting to it.
Heck yeah.
This brings us to our break. So we've already talked about the basic mechanics of Mausritter, the little bit of lore that there is for Mausritter, and creating a mouse for this game. We're going to take a quick break and run some ads. And when we come back, we will talk about combat and magic and running the game. All right, we'll see you on the other side. Bye, folks.
Yeah. See y'all in a bit.
Hello, and welcome back to a very special Halloween episode of Rough Start. Tonight we are talking about Mausritter, the game where you play as brave mice in a scary world. Before the break, we talked about the lore of Mausritter. We talked about the basic mechanics and the roll under system that they use. And we talked about making a little mouse character as well. And now that Blerdy and I are back from our break, we are going to talk about combat. Um, let's get into it. This one will be a little bit meaty, but it is also very straightforward.
Yeah, I could start.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So, as the book states, combat is dangerous business for mice, even brave adventurers. But sometimes, as it states, it cannot be avoided. First off, I'm going to just say this before you begin the combat, you players should really consider if you want to fight. I would highly recommend if you're going to fight, yeah, be careful. But if you are going to fight, if you're attacking unsuspecting foes, your mouse and any allies aware of the plan, you just go first. Otherwise, make a dex save to act before your opponents. In following combat rounds, maintain this order. So, let's say my mouse, who has a dex of, let's say, 11, I roll a d20 and I roll under that. I go first, and that's how it proceeds from there on. You go, then the enemy goes, and then you go, the enemy goes, and then vice versa, back again, all like that.
Perfect. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's not that complicated, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And so once you have made your dex save to act before your opponents, on your turn in a combat round, I hate to use the word turn because turn also means something else in this game. When you go in combat, your mouse can move up to 12 inches and perform one action. Actions can be anything from negotiating, attacking, fleeing, or performing something risky, like tripping or disarming their opponent. Something they call it a gambit in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the cool thing is about the 12 inches, the game, there is some theater of mind aspect to it. So you don't have to worry like, oh, can I only move like 3 inches this turn and then attack and then move another 12 inches? Is there attack of opportunity? There really isn't any of that. Now, you can homebrew that in, but there isn't any of that to begin with. The 12 inches is very specific, and when I was running this game, I never really used that specific reference. I just said if you can hit them, you can hit them. If you have a ranged weapon, you can hit them. If you're up close and personal or you need to move, I just let them know. I just really work with the narrative. So
For sure.
that 12 inches is definitely like, you can listen to it or not. But
Yeah, I think
speaking
that makes
of,
sense. Theater of the
yeah,
mind.
yeah. But speaking of that, attacks always hit. You don't have to roll to attack, you just hit. And that means the enemies also do the same thing. So you roll your weapons die and do that much damage to an opponent minus their armor. When an attack is impaired, for example, you are maybe weak or maybe you are tied down and you're trying to swing your weapon, such as firing into cover or anything like that, you roll a d4 for damage regardless of the weapon. And when you have advantage or enhanced, they call it, you roll a d12.
Perfect. Very straightforward. Yeah, no rolling to attack in this game. Just whatever your weapon's damage die is, you do that much damage. Or if it's impaired, a d4, or enhanced, a big juicy d12. Yeah, perfect.
If you're feeling spicy, you can make it a d20 if you are really feeling cool. I did that once because I just thought it would be cool. And it was the only time I gave the player the option to use a d20 because that would be absolutely ridiculous. And I think they rolled like a 5. So it didn't matter anyway.
A little bit of a wasted opportunity. Oh, that's too bad.
But it felt cool. Like, that's what matters. It felt cool.
Exactly. I'm sure it was an absolutely very cool moment as well.
It was.
Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, very straightforward. So, because as you mentioned, your attacks always hit, your enemies' attacks always hit you as well. So you will take some damage to your hit points. Once your HP is depleted, any leftover damage is dealt directly to your strength ability score. Attribute is what they call it in Mausritter. Um, so when damage is dealt to strength, you must make a strength save. If you fail, you take critical damage. And when a creature takes critical damage, they take an injured condition
Hmm.
and are incapacitated until tended to by an ally, or if they take a short rest. If an incapacitated creature is left untended for 6 exploration turns, they die. If you have your strength reduced to 0, you're dead. If your dex is reduced to 0, you're unable to move. If your will is reduced to 0, you're reduced to insensibility. So there are a lot of things that can spiral and stack up on you in this game if you let it.
Yeah. In fact, while HP, let me just make sure to check this. HP is a obviously different stat. Magic, some particular effects can lower your attributes over time, and other things can lower your attributes. So you definitely want to be careful about managing those as well. And also note, as your stats get lower, it gets harder to succeed. For example, if y'all are traveling through a massive mega dungeon, you've gone through multiple journeys down, and one of your mice is at 2 strength, 5 dex, and 5 will out of their like maybe 10, 10, and 10, you best not fight because you're literally on death's door. And also, it's just harder to succeed at rolls unless you have advantage or something like that.
Yes. Turns out when the number goes down, it's harder to roll under that number.
Yeah, I know. Like, it just makes sense.
Crazy. I hate when that happens. But there is good news. When you take damage, you can also heal and you can rest. Um, this game has short rests, long rests, and full rests. If you want to talk about the difference between the three.
Yeah, totally. So, short rest, you just take one turn. As we said earlier, turn is 10 minutes. It's a swig of water and a few minutes of rest will restore d6 plus one hit points. Long rest, you take one watch. It's a meal and some sleep will restore all your hit points. And a full rest is taking a week back in safety, or takes a week back in safety, excuse me. This fully restores your mouse's ability scores and removes most long-term conditions. This costs 20 pips at a settlement.
So
Now,
pretty pricey.
yeah, especially if you're broke. And the 20 pips, I usually rolled it as per person or per mouse. Since I don't understand why that wouldn't be per mouse or per person, but that's up to GM discretion and player discretion as well.
I would personally read that as per mouse as well.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, although I guess
And
if they wanted to try and haggle, they
yeah,
could.
yeah, yeah, definitely you could haggle. I would personally say if you want to haggle, that's just more of a matter of what the players say, because there technically isn't any charisma, but you could use will, a will save.
Yeah, because you're too stubborn and you don't give up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Actually,
There you go. Yeah, I want this hotel room for 15 pips, and I'm not taking no for an answer.
or you could threaten them maybe physically, or if you have magic or a tablet of magic, then you
Yeah,
could do that. So that
or
is a potential.
you could sneak back after dark and take the pips back from their lockbox. I'm just thinking of every way to use strength, dex, and will here.
Yeah, really, it's up to your creativity as the players.
There you go. Oh, I do also want to mention, so for the long rest, taking one watch, and restoring HP. If HP is already full, you can also restore your attribute score as well.
Yes, that is correct. Also, we're not talking about advancement yet, but you can only have advancements when you're at a settlement or a place of rest. You cannot have it at a dungeon unless your GM allows it. I think I allowed it up once in a dungeon simply because the players were never going to leave that dungeon.
Yeah, I'd
But
imagine in a horror game it would be much more difficult to get to a settlement as well.
yeah, so depending on the theming of your game, I would argue that when it states here for advancement, your mouse earns XP from bringing treasure and useful goods back from places of danger to a safety to a safety to the safety of a mouse settlement. For every pip worthy of treasure brought to safety, your mouse earns 1 EXP. So, yeah, you definitely want them to go back to a place of safety.
Definitely. A little more foreshadowing, a little sneak peek of leveling up and advancement in Mausritter.
Amen on that one.
Woo! Okay, I think the something that very much complements combat is magic. So Mausritter has magic spells in it. Something I think is really cool is that I guess, this is very much lore based as well, so we didn't touch on it in the lore section, but spells are living spirits trapped by runes carved on obsidian tablets. Spells are naturally found in deep and dangerous places. The creation of spells is an art lost to all but the most learned wizards, and they guard their secrets closely. So, magic and spells.
Yeah. So, first off, casting a spell. To cast a spell, your mouse must hold the tablet in their paw or hand and read it aloud. And note out loud part. That means you cannot sneak and cast magic. You cannot sneak and cast magic. It needs to be allowed. That also means you need to speak it. Now, I will say if your character is mute or maybe hard of hearing or whatnot, then obviously I would argue that GM discretion, you let your disabled mouse characters cast magic. Trust me, I'm not gonna get into that whole deep. But regardless, they need to be able to speak it and or say the spell.
Yes, for me, it's about intention.
Yes,
So if
yes,
you
of course.
have a mouse who cannot speak and they sign it with their hands, I think
Yeah,
that counts. I think that absolutely
yeah,
counts.
of course. It's obviously different if they're tied up and they can't speak at all. They can't cast magic to begin with.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of other important things, when your mouse casts a spell, and this is the unique part, you need to decide on the level or power to cast it, up to a number of dots. So every spell has a number of dots. From Fireball, Heal, Magic Missile, Fear, every one of them has dots. It's assumed that they all have 3 dots, a maximum of 3 dots. So, or at the very least, a minimum of 3 dots. As stated, roll a number of d6 equal to the power the spell is cast with. For each die which shows the value 4, 5, or 6, mark 1 usage on the spell.
Yes.
So, a good example, you don't mind me, I give an example?
Yeah, I think we actually have, if you want to, we have a fireball on the next slide if you want to use that as an example.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So, Fireball, let's say I roll a d6. I'm going to actually do that in real life right now. Give me a
Oh,
minute.
real life example.
So, I actually rolled a 6. So, thanks. So, I roll a 6 and you mark 1 usage off of the Fireball. What does that look like? As stated in the book, shoot a Fireball up to 24 inches, dealing the sum, which is going to be sum plus dice damage to all creatures within 6 inches. Now, what does that mean? Thumb means, let's see here.
There we go. Oh, actually, my lovely producer Molly, can you hit the next slide so we can see the fireball spell? Thank
Thank you, thank you.
you.
So, when you are rolling, that means the sum is going to be a d6 plus the dice, which is a d6, as stated in the effect spell. In fact, excuse me, let me roll back a minute because I didn't use a lot of spells in the game, so
No,
I'm a
you're fine.
little.
So it took me a while. I had to read this portion a few times to understand it, because I didn't realize at first that it's much like attacking. How you don't have to roll to attack; the attack just hits. The spell also just happens. Is my understanding of it. So then the 4, 5, or 6 marks the usage on the spell. So even regardless if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, the spell still happens. You just have the added benefit of not needing to mark a usage on the spell. And then when the spell has an effect, it varies depending on the number of dice invested, which is the power you've decided to cast it with, up to the number of usage dots. So let's say for Fireball, we've decided to spend 3 dots on it. So you'd roll 3 dice, and then you've got a 6. So we'll say 6
Yep.
plus 3.
Yep. That sounds about right. But the funny thing is miscasts. So that was a great explanation, by the way, Charlotte, because
Thank you.
the magic system is a little bit confusing, so I appreciate the support there.
Yeah,
The
I did have
problem
to
is,
read it maybe 3 times to get it.
yeah, also as a GM, if you're not understanding a rule to this game, you could just roll it how you feel is best and then come back to it. Biggest caveat as a GM, you don't need to be a master of any rule. You don't need to know every single ruling. As long as you're players and you're all having fun, it's okay.
Yes.
Now, obviously, try to run the game right unless you play with rules lawyers, but anyway. Miscast. In this example, I rolled a 6, which means whenever 1 or more d6s are rolled when casting a spell, the caster takes d6 damage to will for each 6 rolled. Let's say in this example, I rolled multiple 6s, like 3 6s. I would take over 18 damage of willpower, which would pretty much knock me the hell out.
Yeah.
So with that, you would have the drain condition. So magic is a risky task. It's a risky effort because it's unknown to most mice. So that's another aspect when you're getting spells. You just can't just cast Fireball without consequences, or Invisibility without consequences, or the Invisible Ring. All example spells without consequences. So it's another form of balancing act. It's a balancing act between, do I just go with combat? Do I cast a spell? Do I upcast or do I downcast? These are decisions you make as a adventurer in Mausritter.
Yes, absolutely. Love that. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah, the number of dice invested, which is the power level, the sum of those rolled dice added together, the misfire and the miscast, and when all of the usage dots on a spell are filled, much like items, it's depleted and cannot be cast. Each spell does have a recharge requirement, so you can see for Fireball, the recharge requirement is to burn in the heart of a raging fire for 3 days and nights. And then you'll be able to cast Fireball again.
Yeah, in fact, many of the recharges seem to be like very, very dangerous. Catnip is one of them. You turn you turn an object into an irresistible lure for a cat. It lasts a number of dice turns. But the recharges, you have to give a cat a gift it truly desires. And mice and cats don't get along. So that will require you likely to go to a dungeon, delve into that dungeon, interact with a cat, try not to get killed, and then go through the dungeon looking for something the cat wants, all in the hopes that you can cast this spell again. That's very powerful.
There you go.
It's a give or take.
Yeah, it really is. There's stuff where it's like you have to drop it from a great height and then catch it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. It's a really cool, like, automatic side quest. It's great for a GM because it's very self-directed, right? You don't have to think up an adventure if they're like, oh, I used up my last fireball. I gotta go start a raging fire and burn it for 3 days and 3 nights. You're like, ooh, little springboard for me to do whatever I want for those 3 days and nights.
Yeah, I mean, also, it begs a lot of questions about like what are they doing? For example, you need to burn this for 3 days and 3 nights, assumes that you're not sleeping,
Yeah.
right? Or one of you has to keep constantly doing that, and you can't do that in a settlement. So there's a lot of complexity to this, a lot of things you can really get into if you as the players and GMs really want that. Or you can hand wave it and say you just get the spell back.
Yeah, well, that's less fun, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest with
yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, I agree, but like I said, different GMs want to do different things.
This is true. This is true. We respect all shapes and sizes of GMs on this channel.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about magic we should touch on.
There's a lot of homebrew for Magic as well, and many other options for that. But we'll get into that when we get there, okay?
Beautiful. Amazing. Well, then in that case, I think we can take it to what we've been foreshadowing and we can talk about advancement a little bit.
Yes.
Ooh. So I believe you've mentioned your mouse earns XP by bringing treasure and useful goods back from places of danger to the safety of a mouse settlement, which to me is very OSR, very AD&D of them to have experience be earned by treasure. I think that's very cool. So for every pip worth of treasure brought to safety, divided equally amongst the party, your mouse earns 1 XP. Your mouse can earn additional XP by spending their pips selflessly on improvements for the whole community. And then when you have enough XP, of course, you level up.
Yeah, I can speak on that improvement of the community. So, if you've played an OSR game, usually the idea is you bring treasure home, you collect it, and then you hoard it like a dragon. And I think it's a testament to the developers and a testament to sort of the game's themes by you going back to your community with your family, your friends, your loved ones, and building that up using your money. I think that's a very they made a very purposeful decision in that. Beyond the mechanics, I think the fact that you use the money for good, or rather for your community, is intentional, and I think builds a greater story about your characters being at least generally decent people.
Yeah. I mean, I think so many TTRPGs are about like the exceptional character and the individual, and to have a game bring it back to community and like being a part of it, I think is really nice. I think that's very cool and very good.
Yeah, that's why I really do like that. It's a very unique mechanic for the game, and I really do appreciate that. Also, advancement isn't too complicated. In terms of levels, you start at level 1, and once you've acquired a certain amount of XP, you level up. For example, to get from level 1 to level 2, you need 1,000 experience points, which is a lot of pips.
Yes.
So to get that, I think you would need it like for every 10 pips to spent this way, your mouse earns 1 XP. For every pip worthy treasure, your mouse earns 1 XP. So that would probably take your character a bit of time.
Yeah.
And the only thing you get from XP and leveling up is hit dice and grit. Hit dice is exactly that. It's more hit dice so you could survive a hit. Roll the dice listed for the new levels hit dice, which means you actually technically could lose hit points with a level. From the intended way of play, you could start off with 6 hit points, but if you roll a 2d6, you instead could have 5. I personally,
That's
that's
so
how I roll
mean.
it. That's how I play
So
it.
mean. I
So
kind of love it
sometimes
though.
you could suggest that I even tell my players, hey, if you roll and you get lower, you are going to have to stick with that hit points. So you need to make that decision on whether or not you want that. I always give my players the option and agency to make the decision, and also have that conversation beforehand with my players. But hit dice, I think, are intended to be rolled like that.
Oof. Wow. Juicy. I love it.
I
And
do. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I believe also you can roll for your attribute increases when you level up too, so you can
Yes.
do that as well.
Yeah, and just a note, it does say here, if the value is higher than your mouse's current hit points, replace your HP with the rolled value. Otherwise, increase your mouse's HP by 1.
Okay, that's a
So
little
a
nicer.
minor little wrong point, but that's how I did play it for my players because it was a horror game and I wanted to be a little bit,
Yeah, you can be a little brutal. You can be a
a
little
little
mean.
brutal. They all survived though. I'll get into that later, but they all survived. Barely.
That sounds like kind of an amazing feat for them to have all survived.
They played really smart, which is
Good.
what Mausritter rewards you for.
There you go. Love it. In addition to rolling hit dice and the attribute increase, you mentioned grit too. Grit is a resource that lets your mouse ignore conditions. So you can see at level 2 you get 1 grit. So you can choose one time to ignore a condition.
Yeah, grits are very powerful tools to have, especially if you're running a long-term Mausritter campaign, or maybe you're streaming a long-term Mausritter campaign on Twitch. Grit will probably be what saves you from getting drained or from a horrible condition. And that's not including conditions that the community has made.
Amazing. Yeah, that's leveling up and advancement is pretty straightforward. I mean, this whole game is pretty straightforward, which I love about it. But something I didn't include in my outline is there are hirelings and help you can recruit in the game as well. And those hirelings can also advance with you.
Yeah. So to speak on hirelings a little bit, so hirelings exactly that. You hire them for a certain amount of pay, and the level of a hireling depends largely on how much you're willing to pay. For example, I had a hireling in the game that was a scholar, and everyone just called him Nerd. Yeah, he got bullied a lot. I don't know why. I think it's because he was obnoxious.
Oh no.
He's like very obnoxious. So, yeah, it really depends on how much money the adventurers have.
For sure.
The hirelings can also be used as extra characters if the other character dies. So yeah, there's that option as well. There's some other stuff as well, like warbands. You want me to go into that as well, Charlotte? Or
I think we can just touch on it briefly. I don't think we need to go super in depth into it.
yeah. So warbands and constructions. I'll admit I did not really use warbands or constructions. Warbands and constructions are definitely a long-term campaign thing, and are more so for OSR nerds who love wargaming, which is where D&D originates from. So there are rules on that on pages 9. Let me just check real quickly. 15, and some parts of pages 14 as well, which is mostly has hirelings on it. So yeah, if y'all interested in warbands and construction, aka constructing a settlement or something like that, or dungeon, you can look at that page.
Yes. I have some friends who are very much into like the settlement management aspect of games, so they would absolutely get a hoot out of that aspect of Mausritter.
Yeah, Mausritter is great like that.
A little something for everybody, truly. It can be scary, it can be heartwarming, it can be a simulator, it can be a management game.
It can be anything you want.
Anything you want. And that's the beauty of TTRPGs.
Wow. The more you know. I wish the gift comes over.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Amazing. I think on that note, that's a perfect note to kind of hit it over to Game Master resources and running the game. I did add some the best practices that I have on the screen here. I believe are actually from the player portion, but I liked them too much not to include them here as well. To ask lots of questions, make notes, draw maps, to work together, to devise schemes and recruit allies. The dice are dangerous. Clever plans don't need to roll. Play to win and delight in losing. Fight dirty, run, die, and roll a new mouse. I love that.
Yeah. It pulls all the tenets from OSR games. I really do mean this. If you are playing Mausritter, you're listening to this right now. Your GM, if you're the GM, trust your players. If you're the players, trust your GM. Smart plans don't need dice rolls. They don't need dice rolls. If your players have this really elaborate plan and they take the time and resources to have it happen, just let them have it happen. Don't take it away from them. Don't make it so difficult and impossible with a roll. Let them have it. If they earned it and if they've worked for it, just give it to them.
Yeah. I think that's great advice in general, and I wish more people did this for every TTRPG. Like, if the idea is good and it's like a reasonable thing that they wouldn't have to roll for, they don't have to roll for it.
Yeah. I think with that also, another point is the game states create situations, not plots. What does that mean? Let the players go and find their adventure. From the magic system you saw from or heard about, from the magic system you heard about to the various monsters and creatures that they'll encounter, it's up to them to create that adventure. Obviously, give them some hooks. Don't just say, hey, everyone starts in a tavern. Give them something to reel onto. For example, when I was running my Loft campaign or a mini campaign, I had them all start on Death's Row, right? And I asked them, what did you do to be there? Whether you think it's fair or not, right? That immediately puts them in a sense of like, oh, what happened? Where are we? Why are we here? It gives them something to work with, and from there, the players get to decide their actions. So let them find their own adventure. Like, just tell them the situation, and they get to discover it for themselves.
I love it. So in Rattenloft, did you have like an evil vampire rat running around, or like what was the what was going
Okay.
on?
So I'm glad you asked. So Rattenloft is a hodgepodge of multiple homebrew material based off obviously Ravenloft, but there was no rat. It was this is a spoiler, but it was them going through a long abandoned portion of a dungeon, which was a part of Ravenloft. And the actual owner was a bunny rabbit, not Bunnylica.
Oh,
Not
I
Bunnylica.
was just gonna ask if it was Bunnicula. You read my
But it was
mind.
Bunnicula. It was Bunnicula.
Okay.
Is it? It's a Bunnicula or Bunnicula?
I think it's Bunnicula because it's like
I'll just
Dracula.
say okay, Bunnicula. So they're traversing through this dungeon that is part like toy house, part wooden manufactured sort of broken down log. And as they dig deeper and delve deeper, they find things like toy soldiers. They find cultist rats that are, they work at Radanoff, they work at Bonilica. They find creatures that are just housed there. They even find like rogues and rats who are, bandits of this area on the top levels. They even find dangerous bullfrogs. And all this was pulled from multiple homebrew.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that sounds so amazing.
Yeah.
As someone who loves the Ravenloft setting, this is so funny to me and so perfect.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about homebrew and all that. I don't know how much time you have left, but I can talk a little bit about that.
We've got a little bit of time left if you want to chat about it.
Yeah,
I do want to stick to stuff in the book first, and then we
of
can
course,
talk
of
about
course.
homebrew stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah, what running the game? There's a lot of random tables in this book, which I really
mhm.
appreciate.
Yeah. In fact, so this loads random tables back to running the game. If you are creating a settlement, there are dozens of settlement tables that you can use for this game or for other games. For example, you can roll the inhabitants, you can roll for notable features in a settlement, you can roll for the governance, you can roll for factions. What kind of factions is it? You can even roll for their disposition, right? On a 2d6 roll, if I'm correct.
I think that sounds
There's,
right.
yep, there's stuff for creating adventure sites. what factions are there? What's the theme? Is it horror? Is it fantasy? Is it comedy? Right? Is it, a place of human destruction? What's the secret there? There's just tons of tables for the kind of denizens, the kind of construction, and the secrets that lie below this earth.
Yeah, I love a random table so much. And there really is for everything that you could need. That you can like create a whole hex map back here in the GM portion of the book. Adventure sites, enemies, literally everything you could think of.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I used a lot of for GMs who want to run this. I used pages 36 and 37 pretty much most of the way through the dungeon. You don't need to. I wouldn't say you don't need to create the entire. You can generate a random dungeon via like itch.io. The random dungeon generators, those are really useful. And then, as players explore, just roll the random room type, creature type, and d6 treasure, and you're good to go. And the story creates itself, really.
Beautiful, amazing. Yeah, I think now at this point, kind of touching on what's in the book, I think we can definitely talk about your own personal advice for the game and kind of the resources that are available to anyone who might want to run Mausritter, like the stuff on itch.io or the community around Mausritter.
Yeah, so the community around Mausritter is a thriving place. I don't know if Loosening Games has a Discord server, but I'm sure they do. And between that and the several Zines, the several bundles that exist, you're going to have plenty of content. For example, looking through my notes, and feel free to put this in the description box for later, but there are so many different characters, NPCs, dungeons, not picnic tables, magic tables, and even homebrew items to add to the game. For example, there's a lovely capybara module slash not module slash NPC option
Oh, I
where
have a capybara
literally,
sticker on my computer right now. I love
oh my
capybaras.
god, that's awesome. Yeah, see, there's like multiple creatures, right? There are a number of extra homebrew items like teas. For example, there's one called Tea Time, where it's about a catalog of mundane and magical teas for Mausritter RPG. If your player's in a settlement and they want to like drink tea, or if they're facing off against like a tea drinker or something like that, include
Oh,
it. There's a compendium on bug-like creatures, from bumblebees to a huntsman spider to ladybugs, which I included in the game, my game. I love
oh,
that capybara, by the way.
yeah, it's so cute. Um, yeah, I mean,
There's
like the
what?
boundless creativity of TTRPG people never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, my favorite ones really were the Rat and Loft. I'll drop that one as well. But there's even ones like on 50 new spells. Over 50 new spells. Like someone just like itch.io just has like loads of content that you just can find randomly when you're looking for it.
I love it. I think that's amazing. Is there anything else you want to add about running the game, or really, we're at the point in the episode? Anything you want to add about Mausritter at large?
Mausritter really is what you make it. It truly is a game of what you make it. And I think it is a good starting point if you want to deviate from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and into OSR games and just expanding your GM repertoire. I, before playing a Mausritter, had very little experience running other games other than 5e, or playing other games other than 5e. I had some experience in some other OSR games and PBTA games, but Mausritter was my dive. And just the ability to not have to worry about so many extra rules and other tidbits really freed me up to have the game I wanted.
Yeah.
And from a combo of just using homebrew material like a Rat and Law to my own creativity and inspiration from Vanillica to adding toy soldiers. That was it's also a separate module. Allowed for my players to have an awesome time. And in the end, what ended up happening is actually the players themselves, one of them came back to me and said, "Hey, I want to run this game for my friends. Can I do that?" And
Oh,
that was a really beautiful moment. So I highly recommend, if you're looking into Mausritter, go with the flow. You don't need to know all the rules. And I personally recommend adding Vanilla and Rattleoff into your game.
yeah. Beautiful, amazing. Oh, it makes my heart so happy to hear that one of your players wanted to take this game and make it their own and run it for other people. I think that's
Yeah.
lovely.
They also naturally found my YouTube video on the topic. So they
Ah!
were like, "Oh, I didn't know how they found it. Well, this must have just appeared on their feed or something." So that was really funny. But yeah, I say take up the sword and don the whiskers of a brave mouse. Hell yeah.
Let's
Go
go.
for it.
Let's do it. Amazing. And you do not need to know every rule, like you mentioned, Blerdy. But there is this handy dandy rules reference, one of the last pages in the book. It really is just almost everything that we talked about during this episode. So here you go, all in one place. Um, Amazing. I think Mausritter is a lovely little game. The capacity to be spooky and scary is an added bonus. The danger is exciting. The inventory management is new and fancy. And I think that will do it for Mausritter. If you've made it this far in the video, let me know in the comments below what sort of adventure you would go on if you were a brave little mouse. I think I would go on a quest for corn so I could make cornbread. How about you, Blerdy?
I would go on a quest to find the great Mudang,
Ooh!
because I think that is a perfect way to. I honestly think a Mudang based settlement adventure dungeon is absolutely brilliant, and I was already cooking up a storm for that one.
I love
So
it.
yeah, just saying.
There we go. All right, Mudang, we're coming for you.
We'll save you, Mudang.
Yeah, it's okay, Mudang. Amazing. You can find Mausritter at mausritter.com, where you can purchase it for a pay what you want price. Thank you, Blerdy, for going on this journey with me, and thank you everyone out there for joining us tonight. You can find me on socials at the Cornbread with a B. And where can people find you?
Folks can find me on YouTube at Blerdy Disposition. You can just type it in YouTube or on Google, Blerdy Disposition. The link to my channel will be down below in the description box. And yeah, feel free to check that out. And is it okay if I shout out like another creator or two that
Yeah.
talked about Mausritter? So another creator that I've talked to briefly who's made a great video on Mausritter is Aaron Voigt, AA Voigt. I will have a link to the video, Mausritter, the Terror of Being Small. Beautiful video. Highly recommended if you're interested in looking at like the literary aspect of Mausritter. Check that. Feel free to check that out, okay?
Beautiful. All right. Anything else you want to plug before we say goodbye?
Oh, I'll just say it again. One more thing. If you are interested in podcasts, and I would say this to you, Charlotte, excuse me, check out Characters About Stories. Great channel about talking about the characters you haven't played yet. So yeah, I'll leave that all, hopefully leave all that down below in the description box. And thanks again for letting me on, and good luck, fellow mouse, or mice, that is.
Yes, all the fellow mouse out there, good luck and happy Halloween.
Yes,
Rough
happy
Start.
Halloween.
Yes, Rough Start goes up every other Tuesday. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and notification bell if you want to stay up to date. And like the video if you like the video. Also give Blerdy a subscription and a follow as well. And until next time, goodbye, little mice. Goodbye.
Bye. Don't get caught by a cat.